What is going on, everybody? Welcome to the show. Another Friday, another episode of Why Are We Bullish? Very excited to have this panel here. This is, I suppose, a little sneak peek of an event coming up in my hometown on July 2nd and 3rd called the Bitcoin Rodeo. We're going to have some awesome people out. So we'll do some intros of just a few of the guests that'll be here in Calgary momentarily when we get them in here. But I hope you guys are all having a good week. This is my first episode back. I've been doing some traveling. I was in Oslo for the Human Rights Foundation Freedom Forum. I was in Prague for BTC Prague, and I've just arrived home back this week. So I'm stoked to be back in the studio and everything and ready to go. Of course, this is now again live. Anything can happen. So I defer to my friend Bill here.
We'll do it live. Fuck it. Do it live. I'll write it and we'll do it live. And thing sucks.
If you have not already, please do like, subscribe, share, all those things. They help a ton getting this content in front of more eyeballs. I am Ben with the BTC Sessions. This is your daily session.
HODL the Bitcoin.
Before we bring in our panelists, take a quick look at where we are in the market right now. I'm pulling up timechaincalendar.com and simultaneously I'm going to pull up the live chat. Everything you say into the chat from here on in will be live for the world to see, for better or worse. Timechaincalendar.com, we're sitting at $64,115 per coin. A single US dollar will snag you 1,560 sats. In terms of fees, next block, 24 sats per byte, anytime 8 sats per byte. And Bitcoin mine, 19.72 million of them. That is 93.88% of the total supply. We'll give a quick shout out to our sponsors and then we'll dive right in. So we'll see you in a sec. Mission to enable independence by being one of the easiest and quickest ways to purchase Bitcoin in Canada and the US. And the best part about it, every buy goes directly into your own self-custody. They never hold your coins. You can add a Bitcoin address as part of onboarding. There's a transparent 1% spread, no hidden fees, no withdrawal fees. Plus they have KYC free sells and bill payments on their website. They're also a publicly traded company under the ticker BTCW on the TSXV. Check them out over at bitcoinwell.com. Check out my full tutorial on how to use them, and you can check out the links in the show notes down below and sign up today. non-KYC.com has some of the best hardware on the market today to secure your Bitcoin. The Cold Card Q is an absolute powerhouse and is my daily driver. And on top of this, they have plenty of other goodies, including the Mark IV, the Tap Signer, Open Dimes, the Block Clock, and much more. If you head over to their website, make sure you use code BTC Sessions at checkout to get a nice discount. Links are in the show notes down below. All right, we're back in and we're going to bring in our panel. Again, everybody in the chat, thank you guys for being here, and keep those comments coming. I see a lot of love for a special guest that's coming in. So let's bring them all in and give some intros here. So I'll get them all up on stage first here. And I want to welcome all you gentlemen. I'll be seeing you in person very soon, but let's go down the line and do some quick intros. Who are you? What do you do? Kind of thing. So Scott, I'll toss it to you first. Welcome back. Can you give yourself an intro for those unfamiliar?
Yeah, good to be back. Thanks for having me on. Super pumped to be here as always, Ben. I'm Scott Dedels. I'm the CEO of Block Rewards and the host of the Block Reward Bitcoin for Beginners podcast, and the author of The Tao of Bitcoin Towards a Cosmology of Energy Money. That's me in a nutshell.
Hell yeah. Well, I'm glad to have you here, man. Excited to have you back in Calgary soon. And yeah, it's going to be a good time. So we'll jump down the line. JP, it's very wonderful to have you on the show here, but I will let you introduce yourself for anybody that may be unfamiliar. Who are you? What do you do?
Well, because I'm a narcissist, this intro of me shouldn't take more than 45 minutes.
Perfect.
But first, I'll tell you who I'm not. I'm much less of a man than Scott. As you can tell by the beard, he's gone through actual male puberty. I'm still waiting for it. And compared to Dave, I'm much less of a cowboy than him, even though I live in Texas. And Ben, compared to you and your hair, I'm obviously less of a Vanilla Ice fan. So that's who I'm not. what I do, I'm one of the leading experts in whatever I choose to talk about in the moment. Self-identified, respect my truth, damn it. And I'm a Bitcoin fan, and by trade, I'm a comedian and lover of freedom. I love to use the language of comedy to help awaken people to protect and preserve what I think is the greatest God-given gift will ever be given, which is freedom. And I think Bitcoin is the digital reflection of that.
Hell yeah. Well, I'm glad to have you, and glad to have you coming up to Calgary. So thanks for being here. And we'll jump one more down the line to Dave, the man responsible for all of us getting together. But Dave, welcome back, and give yourself a little intro.
Thanks. I am Dave Bradley. I'm widely known as the strongest and best looking Bitcoin entrepreneur in Canada. I've got a few other titles, but I'll leave those off because I wanted to mention the reasons that I'm feeling good today, which is I have my raw milk White Russian and this very rare limited edition Bull Bitcoin cowboy hat. We once upon a time made 4 of these, one for Francis, one for Madex, and one for Jimmy Song, and one for me. And because that was 5 years ago, obviously Francis and Madex have lost theirs.
Obviously.
And so there's only 2 left now.
Fantastic. And I always like to do this because I know that you stated something that somebody might construe as, opinion, but no, in fact, as stated on the official website, Dave Bradley is the strongest and best looking Bitcoin entrepreneur in Canada. And also, you can see here the quote. This is the Premier of Alberta. Quote, Dave is very handsome. And that is a real quote. So just if you were questioning, and if you're really curious, you can scroll down and see steaks that he has eaten. So it's a quality website. I encourage you to check out bitcoinbrains.com. But nonetheless, we're going to dive in. Gentlemen, again, thank you all for being here. Everybody else that's joining in, thank you for being here as well. Everybody in the chat, keep those comments coming. Hit that like button, give this a share. But we're going to dive in. This show, if you're unfamiliar, is called Why Are We Bullish? And simple premise to the show. Basically, each one of us, we've come with a reason for being bullish in and around Bitcoin, something we're excited about, something that's currently top of mind, and that can take really any form that we please. The flow of the show is as such. Number one, somebody's going to drop their reason for being bullish. This is their chance to rant and chat about whatever they are currently excited about. Number two, altogether, we're going to riff on that reason. So comments, questions, whatever rabbit holes we decide to go down. And then number three, we're going to rotate to the next person until we've all had a turn. Simple, reason, riff, rotate. So we're going to dive in. I'm going to get started here, and then we'll go from there. So my reason for being bullish this week, and I've had this reason before, but I'm bringing it back into the fold because it's coming just the day before the Bitcoin rodeo here in Calgary. And my reason for being bullish is we are hosting our third SAT market. And what the SAT market is we've gotten together with local Bitcoiners, people from in and around Calgary and Alberta, and even from outside of Alberta, from British Columbia and Saskatchewan, people flying in, driving in, all kinds of great people. But it's all businesses that accept Bitcoin. And so we create a local market. We all get together. There's farmers with beef and chicken and eggs and all that kind of stuff. There's tradesmen, there's roofers, there's plumbers, there's all kinds of great people. And then there's also artists and creative people and musicians. And so we all get together and we just have a little market and we hang out and support each other. And the reason I think this is so important is as the world trends towards the totalitarian hellhole that it seems to be leaning towards, despite pockets of promise in places like Texas and the Texas of Canada, which is of course Alberta. In a situation where we have that top-down control trying to stop the on and off ramps, if you're trying to low-key stack some sats and build your pile of freedom money, but then that happens and you don't have relationships, peer-to-peer relationships with people that get it, then what the hell are you going to do with your Bitcoin at the end of the day? right? You need to have those important relationships with people. Like you need to shake your rancher's hand. You need to have an egg guy. You need to know a barber that's going to take your sats and will understand the value of that. And so that's what we're trying to build. We're trying to get people together. We're trying to get like-minded, freedom-oriented individuals that actually create good products and services that people actually need, and aggregate them together in one place, not just for that once every 3 months or so that we do this, but for in between, so that we all know each other, so we can all call each other up and help each other out whenever we need something that the other person makes or does. And so that is coming up on July 1st. We've got a lot of great people coming in. If you're going to be in Calgary, please do visit. It's free to attend. If you want to be a merchant, it's also free to be a merchant. I'm just fronting the cost because I think it's important to build this here. And yeah, I encourage everybody to come out. And I'm sure some of the people that are in for the Bitcoin rodeo will pop by as well. I think we might do a little barbecue afterwards too. So anyways, that's it. The SAT market, that's what I'm excited about. And I guess more broadly about creating local Bitcoin circular economies and actually using some of those SATs, because I mean, a couple of you gents know, but JP, if you didn't know, I've been living on Bitcoin since 2020. So I've 90 to 95% of my income is Bitcoin, and I am very averse to dollars. And if somebody wants to pay me in dollars, I charge a 20% premium. So, I have as few dollars as possible, and I think this is the way to go. I quite enjoy it. So, gents, I'll open it up to comments, questions, whatever little rabbit holes we want to go down before we do a rotation. But I don't know, Scott, you've been a part of the SAT market a couple times. Have you had a good time here?
Yeah, I've been to all of them. I've had a great time. I think, firstly, congratulations, Ben. Somebody needs to spearhead the initiative of creating a marketplace where we will freely be able to spend money after we've all hit our carbon limits, which is probably not that far in the future. And if you build it, they will come. You meet all kinds of people at the SAT markets. And the coolest one I saw last time, I had a great conversation with a fellow as a business, helping people end to end plan their sort of off-grid property. So it's not just services. There's all kinds of really interesting people you'll meet there, and of course, build your network for other people who want to accept unstoppable money.
Was that Dakota with the Cohen Farms guy? Mm-hmm. We did an interview recently, and I think he just put it out today. But he's great. He basically teaches people how to homestead, and awesome dude, great dude to have at the market. Like what a legend.
Yeah, especially for a urbanite like me who loves to fantasize about having the ability to actually go off grid. I'd be dead in weeks, right? Like, yeah. I don't even know how to plant a tomato.
Yeah. And Chris as well from Chaos Farm that has come down. You know, they're both great. So that's awesome.
I personally, I think it's inspiring to hear that you think you could last for weeks if the poop hits the fan, Scott. I don't know. I think I'm counting days, not weeks, for myself. But a thought on the SAT market. One, thank you for doing that, Ben. One of the things that I think is lacking that we need more of is creating the marketplace where we can use our Bitcoin to sustain our lives and thrive, because obviously inherently Bitcoin is worthless. What makes it worthwhile is what it can do for you. And I make the mistake too often of just looking at Bitcoin as an investment and having the mindset, well, I don't want to spend it because like that's the thing that's going to go up in value. But realizing kind of like, you know, passing the puck to where the player's going to be, we need the marketplace in our future, because when we're relying on our dollars, you know, the illusion is those are under our control. The reality is the banks, the governments that can just print more, devalue that currency. We saw with a Freedom Trucker convoy, just freezing bank accounts, shutting them down. So to truly empower ourselves today and where we might go to help make us not go where we don't want to go. More marketplace, more vendors, more stores, shops, individuals accepting and receiving and sending Bitcoin. I love that.
That's awesome. I'm glad you mentioned the trucker protest. You see this little light on the shelf behind me right there? That's my Bitcoin node. I set up the fundraiser that raised the Bitcoin for the trucker protest, and $1.3 million went through that thing in donations. So yeah, that's there it is.
That's incredible.
Don't tell anyone that anymore, Ben.
Yeah.
I think we're gonna see federal agents come in behind them before the show's over.
Yeah, I heard some weird noises outside. Just
is that Chrystia Freeland's bat signal above your head now?
I think so. Yeah. Dave, I mean, you've been at the SAP markets and everything. Well, you know, what's your take on what's going on?
So first of all, I have to say that if we do melt down into a Mad Max post-apocalyptic society, I'm obviously going to be a pretty kick-ass warlord, and I'll thrive. It'll be fine. I might shave one side of my head, but yeah, I mean, I think the general premise, the important part is that right now in most of our economy, we're essentially asking the government's help and permission to transact with each other. And that's what happens when you're using dollars. You know, we've got in Canada, obviously a very well-liked dictator. And there are a lot of people here who do not like Trudeau at all, but still continue to use Trudeau's money. Like, why would you just use something that he can print for free, let alone that the federal government can stop with relative ease whenever they want to? So yeah, I'm definitely not going to stop eating meat when they tell us we can't. And this is like a good step in that direction. The other thing I wanted to shill is this app that I just mainly really discovered when we were in Prague last week for BCC Prague. And this app is called Vexel, vexel.it. This is made by Satoshi Labs, the makers of Trezor and a bunch of other great companies, one of the oldest and greatest Bitcoin companies out there. And this is actually set up as a nonprofit, and it does a couple things. First, it is a P2P marketplace where people can buy and sell Bitcoin to each other. You can set up a fee. It's not very different than a bunch of the other P2P marketplaces out there. Still potentially useful, but the thing that really caught my eye is the market listings, where you can basically list anything you want on there for sale for Bitcoin. I have like a 1/3 full bottle of like the original sriracha sauce. I think I'm going to put up there for 1 Bitcoin. We'll see if anyone takes that. But seriously, I put an ad up there to try to buy raw milk because that's harder to get than cocaine in Canada. And yeah, I mean, I think these kind of tools, obviously centered around Bitcoin, are really just going to cut the government out of everything that we want to buy and sell. Yeah.
I think at the market, we should probably shill this pretty hard, because the idea of being able to list, products and services, but also just like having the equivalent of like a Facebook marketplace type deal, but for Bitcoiners in the area, is pretty solid. And so, and it's very, they've got an interesting way of doing things where you have like a code or like a QR code, and when you're in person with somebody and able to like physically vet them, you can scan each other's codes, and then that gives you linkages to each other's contacts. And so you build this kind of like web of social trust amongst everybody. And so when you see an ad, you don't necessarily, if you're not directly connected with the person, you don't necessarily see who the person is, but you see how you're connected to them and how many of your other contacts actually know this person. And so you have a degree of vetting through that, because you know that your friends have been in direct contact with this person. And so I think, I think it has a lot of promise. I tried this out early on, but they didn't have the marketplace aspect of it yet. And now that it does, I think this probably solves a lot of problems for me, or could. So
it's important to mention also with the contact thing, you never actually share your contacts with Vexel or any third party. They just encrypt your contacts, and you have a hash of each contact, and then they compare that hash to everyone else's hashes of their contacts, and that's how they determine whether you know the same people. So it is like privacy approved, I guess. Yeah, and it's a C-Funk in the chat mentioned it's a web of trust. So this is like a consensus algorithm of some kind that has been used for a while in the world, and some early Bitcoin projects use the same thing as well.
Yeah, yeah. It'd be interesting to see. Again, I see Ocean in the chat mentioning Noster. It'd be interesting to see if those two worlds collide as well. But nonetheless, I'm just excited to see people keen to connect with each other and have these peer-to-peer relationships coincide with also utilizing Bitcoin. I think it's a good step in the right direction. So yeah, so I'll put a bow on my topic there. But again, if you're going to be in Calgary for the Bitcoin Rodeo, consider being here a day early on Canada Day, actually, to check out the SAT market, and we'll probably hang out afterwards as well. So yeah, with that, we're going to do a rotation, and we'll move to the next reason for being bullish. And Scott, I'm going to call on you first, and I'll cue you up with the same question everybody's going to get. Why are you bullish?
You know, it's funny. I think that it's like it's been a sideways bull crab chop, and everyone's caught up in the price of. But what's going on in the market in general, it's almost impossible not to be excited about, in my opinion. This week we had Germany let us handed a huge stack, and you know, the Feds have been dumping their Silk Road stack at the same time. While Saylor vacuumed up 11,000, there was a Bitcoin whale that hadn't bought in 2 years that picked up another 6,000 yesterday. And this thing that's going on with Michael Dell and Saylor tweeting back and forth. Michael Dell, the head of Dell Computers, has a net worth that's like 12 times Saylor. Like, this is a giga Michael. He's the orders of Michael higher than Saylor. And what's happening at the big level, if you zoom out enough, is people who either don't understand Bitcoin or don't care if it retains its value or goes up are dumping it into the hands of people who have no intentions of ever selling ever and care about how it performs and grows and thrives. And so, like, this is just a transfer of real wealth that's occurring in real time. And in the shorter time frames, it might not be great for Bitcoin's price in dollar, but in terms of what it means for us, you know, I think like the game theory around billionaire Michaels multiplying in terms of their interest in stacking sats is just so huge, because all these people on their own, none of them have an interest or any interest in having their own worth diluted and debased. And so they don't need any extra incentive other than understanding the technology and how it works. And they're going to do it on their own. And so Germany has another 40-something thousand to donate to the rest of people who aren't ready to light their currency on fire. And I couldn't be more excited to watch it happen.
I love when governments that can print their own money sell something that cannot be printed for the very thing they're capable of printing.
It's like hooking a tube up from your own butt to create your dinner. You know, like
I feel like you're on a bit of a roll. Orders of Michael and butt tubes. It's yeah. I don't know. I'll let you other gentlemen chime in on this though.
Yeah, the orders of Michael, I think that's a great new like aspect of the metric system. And also just like what the governments are doing. It makes me think of FTX. Like it's kind of like the same except worse. And we kind of feed into it, pretend like we're this giant Ponzi scheme of fiat currency is gonna help us, but it's like our fate is so out of our control when we're, you know, investing in a way, putting our lives into that. So yeah, I love hearing what you're saying, Scott, and love it when you invent new terms.
Yeah, I mean, again, lettuce handed governments, going into convicted individuals that understand the value, and Yeah, sorry. Go ahead, GP.
I was just gonna say I pretended like I knew what all that meant too.
You know, it's like if you could go back in time in reverse and say the European settlers already owned Manhattan and were asking for beads instead. Like, could we have those beads? And you guys take the land. We're good. These beads look great. Our wives will love them.
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah. There comes a time where it's going to be interesting at some point, and I don't know when this point this threshold will be hit, but the amount of Bitcoin that, say, the U.S. government once held at some point will be unobtainable, regardless of the amount of currency they print to try and obtain it, because the currency will devalue too much as they race to buy Bitcoin with it. So it's like at some point that domino falls, and that I have to wonder when that realization will take place, where they go, oh my God, like we don't even have the mechanism to obtain what we once had. Like, we've screwed up so bad. And at that point, it's just hungry hippos, but countries in Bitcoin.
We don't necessarily have the best and brightest running any of our governments, so I don't know that they know about that foresight. I think it's mostly about instant power gratification for these people. So yeah.
Yes.
Luckily, we don't have our best and brightest running the governments.
Thank God.
I've been kind of pushing this same idea in another way to some of my circle lately, and as the as the strongest and best looking Bitcoin entrepreneur in Canada, I obviously have a lot of oil barons in my close friend circle.
Yeah.
And so talking to some of these oil barons, I've been using the same metaphor lately. It's like, you guys are getting scammed. Like, you're pulling the single most useful thing in the world out of the earth, and you're selling it for something that Trudeau literally just prints out of nowhere. Like, it's this this really nefarious deal that sort of underpins the entire USD based fiat system, wherein the sale of oil for Bitcoin or sorry, for dollars kind of like validates dollars as a choice for everything else.
Mm-hmm.
You know, because pretty much everything else is downstream from oil in some way or another, right? Like, there's literally nothing that you can buy, use, or consume that isn't made of oil or had oil used in the making of that thing. Mm-hmm. And so I think that era is coming to an end.
Yeah. Sorry, Scott. I was just going to say it echoes to me. If you guys have read Confessions of an Economic Hitman, it echoes that, right? Because these countries and, the IMF and the BIS, and they'll go into these countries, or the US will go into another country and say, oh, wow, it looks like you have so many resources, but it's really hard to get those out of the ground. Maybe we could give you a predatory loan to help you with that. And, they recognize that the resources are the true value, not the currency that they can, create loans for out of nothing, let alone the currency itself. And then they screw over these people into eventually defaulting on loans, restructuring those loans, and eventually having to give up said resources to pay off or otherwise default on said loans. And they just get, again, like, all of the resources are extracted by these outside entities. But it's just that on a global scale, with, again, being remunerated in something that is completely useless, that is printed from nothing. Scott, sorry, I interrupted you.
Yeah, no worries, man. The oil thing, I also just, maybe 2 weeks ago now, the quiet expiration of the petrodollar agreement with Saudis, like, it just makes me wonder how far we are away from countries genuinely wanting to settle oil deals in something of genuine value. And so what happens next?
Yeah, 100%. I guess we'll find out sooner rather than later. Who knows?
And all that also makes me think of a absolutely useless analogy, but that may not even be accurate, but I'll share it anyway as though it's true. It's almost like oil is the Bitcoin of the earth, and like the green energy that's all attached to these Green New Deals, all for your protection. Don't leave your home, don't breathe either. But like the green energy, the windmills, the solar panels cannot be produced without oil. It's just, to me, those green energies are almost like the fiat currency relative to oil being the Bitcoin of the earth.
I mean, I think that's pretty accurate, right?
Does that check out? I don't know if I'm just too sleep deprived or.
One thing that's funny is the way the left sort of weaponizes language, and they've got this idea that you've got organic food and inorganic food, and really the fact is that like oil is organic, right? It's an organic compound. So we're serving top quality AAA Alberta organic oil.
Yes, it is finely produced for sure. Awesome. Well, with that, Scott, again, I appreciate your topic, and we'll put a little bow on that one, and do another rotation here. Everybody in the chat, again, thank you for being here. Make sure you hit that like button and give this little share, retweet, share on Nostr. Actually, we are live to Nostr here as well. So everybody in Nostr, thanks for being here. Before we do our rotation down to JP next, we've got one last little shout out to a sponsor, and then we will dive right in. So we'll be back in about 30 seconds here. And lending, instant self-custody, and no KYC, HODLHODL is the place to be. You can sign up with just an email address, and once you're there, you can start browsing offers immediately, whether you're looking to buy and sell, or whether you're looking to lend or borrow. You can check them out today at the links down below. All right, quick one, and we're right back in. And JP, I'm tossing it down to you, going to cue you up with the same question. Why are you bullish?
Yeah, I think back to when Satoshi invented Bitcoin, which I think is somehow he tapped into the collective consciousness and created a digital representation of decentralization, which I think is the human way of living. And a decade and a half or so ago, and you could look at the world, and maybe it'd be a little naive, but you could have said, we don't really need Bitcoin now. That's arguable, but you could definitely say that more than now. But I'm just blown away by the foresight of maybe we didn't need it then. We sure as hell need it now. And we sure as hell need it where the totalitarian psychopaths who weren't held enough as children want to take our world. So I look at what's going on in the world now. Down here in the US, it's an election year. Boy, it's going to get good. I mean, indictments against Trump, convicted felon, Biden is doing parkour every time he has a chance to fall off a stage. And it's just becoming an absolute crap show. The censorship, the 1984 playbook, the White House just came out and said those videos of Biden falling, those are cheap fakes, which is literally embodying the George Orwell quote that says, the party's final and most essential command was to get people to betray their senses. Now, I'm paraphrasing the quote. So things are intensifying, and they're intensifying in a direction where if we allow ourselves to grow it, to go that way, it's just complete centralization, power away from people, power to the state, the governments, or whoever the puppet masters are controlling those. So I'm bullish on Bitcoin because I see things getting intense in the world, but I also see a mass awakening. Compared to 4 years ago, I see way more people awake to what's going on in the world, and they want to do something about it. And a lot of people want solutions. They're not necessarily going to come up with them on their own, but they'll adopt them when they're presented to them. And Bitcoin is absolutely a solution. It's like the opposite of communism, opposite of full centralized totalitarian control. We'll tell you this is your money. It's not. We'll just, let you play make believe. This is your fiat money. Have fun with it. You better toe the line, or else our money isn't going to be pretending to be yours anymore. So I'm bullish on Bitcoin because it pisses off the tyrants, but even more so to that defiance, it empowers the people. I think the old paradigm of people outsourcing their well-being out in terms of food production, currency, marketplace, staying alive, in their thoughts, instead of outsourcing it to something outside of themselves, government, media, big food industry, we're now seeing that paradigm crumble. And the new paradigm is emerging. It's a decentralized paradigm. It's truly power back to the people if we continue to energize that track. And Bitcoin, a decade and a half ago, it's a blessing. It's a fruit that has absolutely come to bear. We've needed this fruit, and it's growing on the trees right now. So the world wants to get nuts, and I think we have a bright future. We have a lot of work to do, but we have a bright future. We have great solutions, and Bitcoin is one of those.
Yeah, I love that. And it's, you can see it happening in real time. I juxtapose a lot of people that I know that are just nihilistic about everything, and I juxtapose them against all of the Bitcoiners that I know that are so hopeful, and their lives have actually, despite the absolute clusterfuck that was the past few years, their lives have gotten better, right? Everybody that I know in Bitcoin, for the most part, over the past since 2020, they're doing significantly better than they were, and not just monetarily, because I know Bitcoin has gone up a lot over that time, but also psychologically and health-wise. Like a lot of people I know in Bitcoin are taking better care of themselves and becoming more self-sufficient and thinking about things a little bit deeper. I mean, a unique thing about Bitcoin is, especially early on, it was my first foray into realizing that the news doesn't always know what it's talking about. And that would have been shortly after some major exchange collapsed in early Bitcoin. And I had barely dug into Bitcoin for more than a couple of months. And the news cycle was basically saying that Bitcoin itself had been hacked, and then it was over. And I was like, well, no, that was just, I barely know anything about this, but I know for sure that is completely untrue. That was just a business that lost other people's money. But every news network was reporting it the exact same. And I was like, if I barely have scratched the surface of this topic, and all news everywhere is reporting this incorrectly, what other things that I know nothing about have I assumed that the news is reporting correctly, that it may be completely inaccurate? And so that was a jarring moment to witness that. But being in Bitcoin and understanding it deeper, more deeply at least than the general public, it gives you that insight into, oh, sometimes people on the news are full of shit. So yeah, and again, you see the juxtaposition of people that I've known over the years, over the past few years, versus the TikToks of nurses in cars that are like, that started with a good wage and now are not even sure why they can't afford rent and groceries just because their currency is broken. I think people will have to gravitate towards what shelters them from that reality, whether or not they understand it. I suppose like the comments to people, the news sometimes.
Yeah. There's this phenomenon where, and I realized this maybe as a teenager at some point, when you see something reported in the media that you actually know a lot about, it's just always like almost completely wrong. And a lot of people have experienced that and kind of written it off. And you just assume that like maybe everything else isn't as wrong as the thing that I actually knew about. But the reality is like they're almost always completely wrong about everything, and they've put us in this spot now where like the Orwell reference, you know, it's like 2 + 2 = 5, and they want us to accept this, and we know they're lying to us, and they know that we know they're lying, but they still look us in the eyes and lie to us just the same. And they think we're idiots. They think we're just going to sit there and take their lies and not call them on it, or at very least, like not change our behavior so as to remove the risks that they're putting on our lives with their lies and theft, essentially, right? And I think it's interesting to go back to what JP was saying about like when did we need Bitcoin? And the reality is that we needed Bitcoin the moment they started devaluing the currency, the moment they started printing money to spend money and taking that value out of nowhere and then spending it in a way that they deemed better than the ways that we would have spent that value that we created and we earned and we should have had the right to spend, right? And as soon as they started doing that, we needed Bitcoin. And there was a book that I hope most people watching this have read called The Sovereign Individual that really predicted Bitcoin in 1995 by basically saying that the internet and encryption will allow the creation of money without the need for the state. And, you know, that was very predictive, obviously, of Bitcoin arising. And I think, you know, that need for a form of money that can't be debased has been just growing and growing. And in the last like 4 years, it's really taken a turn, right? Like we need Bitcoin more than we ever have, because even by like official inflation numbers, I saw some stats the other day where, you know, based on official numbers, we were losing a third of our purchasing power every 10 years roughly. And now we've lost it in 2 years. And so it's gotten a lot worse, and the need for Bitcoin is much greater. And I think that a lot more people are feeling that pain, right? Like if you would have talked to an average person on the street about inflation in 2019, they probably heard of it, but like didn't really care that much. And nowadays it's like, oh yeah, like the price of steak has tripled. Like everyone who is poor enough to have to do their own grocery shopping has felt this now, and it's a real thing. And I think that's contributed to a lot more of this awakening where people are looking at the 2 + 2 = 5 and being like, fuck no, 2 + 2 does not equal 5, and you can't have my money. And that's what we're going through right now. And I think that's incredibly encouraging that, you know, there's way more people that are at least like ready to listen to the solution to this problem that they've now identified.
Dave, I'm confused, man. The news told me that paying a 30% surcharge on everything would prevent forest fires. Is that not true? Or I got to riff on what JP said about collective consciousness, because I love that stuff. But it made me think of the really famous clip of a fellow named Terrence McKenna from the late 90s. And he's just talking about how there's just an acceleration of weirdness, and things are just going to get weirder and weirder, and more people are going to notice. And at some point, it's going to get so weird that eventually we're all going to have to acknowledge it and talk about it. And at that point, then a real sort of like mass transformation of consciousness can occur. And I think what we're experiencing as the 2020s roll on is this like ratcheting up of the weirdness, and it's translating through to money. And this is the reason why. You know, Bitcoin is almost like a visible way to measure the number of people who are paying attention to the weirdness, and the price is like a direct, like a visualization of how many people are starting to turn off that old media and think for themselves.
Yeah. It's interesting to see. I mean, again, in the realm, I suppose, of politics. Did you guys see this past week? I mean, it's I suppose it's not surprising given the politician, but a while back, Orange Pill app, they bought like 500 and something copies of the Bitcoin Standard. And then they went to the House of Representatives and Congress and everything, and just handed them out to everybody, like all of the congressmen and everything. And after after reading that book, Thomas Massey, he cited it. He was being interviewed, and he's like, well, I read the Bitcoin Standard, and I already wasn't a fan of the Fed, but then I decided to put forth a resolution to end the Fed, and I thought that maybe I'd get like a couple co-sponsors, and he got like just shy of 30 co-sponsors on the bill that he put forward. And I think part of that may have been because other people are maybe read through the book, but also are recognizing what a racket everything is. And I mean, even just the fact that the term fiat is becoming more recognized, that people even know what fiat currency is, and not everybody does, but like, I had never, ever heard that term used, in a newscast or, in a conversation with, anybody that I know. And now it gets tossed around. I hear it relatively regularly, and not just in Bitcoin circles, but like on TV and with my quote unquote normie friends. It happens. So people are and the meme money printer go burr. That wasn't a Bitcoiner that made that up. That was entirely its own thing. And people are getting how ridiculous and again how weird everything is. And they're starting to point it out. And that's a good thing.
It is about to be the biggest accidental branding disaster for the car company since Corona.
I'm like, wait until people wake up one day and they're like, honey, there's actually literally an all-seeing eye pyramid on this bill. It's been there the whole time. Has this been there the whole time?
It's been looking at us, and we've been looking at it. And when you mentioned like understanding the term fiat, I remember a little over 3 years ago when I woke up to Bitcoin, it was by Michael Saylor and Tony Robbins interview, and just hearing Michael Saylor talk about it, I'm like, it makes sense to me now. So understanding, the term fiat currency, that's a term, it created a distinction. And amongst other things it did for my mind is it let me know this isn't the only thing. It's just one thing. But I think if we're kind of sleeping through life, it's pretty convenient when people think this is the only thing. It's not fiat currency, it's currency. And Ben, you mentioned something a few minutes ago that I think is just so important. You mentioned some people have a nihilistic perspective, low quality of life, psychology is probably not enjoyable to live in. And then a lot of people in the Bitcoiner community, there's like optimism and overall like a better quality mindset in life people have. I think that's so important because I'm a fan of humanity. I think it's important to enjoy life now and have a good quality of life. There's other things that are important too, but that's one of them. And there's a distinction I see within the, call it awakened community, people who are enlightened that, what we're being told in the world is going on in the world isn't what's going on. We see what's going on. Some of those people, depressed, sad, pissed off, angry, that's their emotional home. Others, and that's they have the same level of enlightenment, they're awake to the same things, but they have a good quality of life. They're relatively happy and optimistic, and they contribute to the betterment of people around them as a result. And the biggest difference I see, whether they're like nihilistic and like crappy life or optimistic, good life, they're taking action. Taking action is what moves someone from hopeless, I see what's going on, but I'm hopeless, I feel helpless, we're all doomed. Versus if you start taking action, now you're feeling the sensation of change happening because you're doing the change. And that automatically lets someone have hope. And it's not delusional hope, it's founded because it's hope based on the reality of you're being a part of the change. And obviously Bitcoin is an action to take. When you're buying Bitcoin, you're using Bitcoin, you're being part of the change. And I think that's one of the reasons why Bitcoiner communities on average are going to be a higher quality of life, a happier person, than those who are awake to the same stuff but not taking action.
Yeah. Yeah, it's you're right. There's this defeat amongst people it's because the currency itself incentivizes that, right? You're spinning your wheels. You even though you're getting a raise in nominal terms, your purchasing power is less than it was. I mean, my wife has been a nurse for almost 15 years now, and she was like, I feel like I have less money, even with my wage increases over the years, on top of like gaining seniority. I feel like I have less money now than I did when I started. And we did the math, and with the devaluation of the currency, she actually does make less money now. She can purchase less stuff at 15 years into her career with her paycheck than she could when she started.
One of the components of human happiness is making progress. But if you're putting the accelerator down in your car, then you do the math like you and your wife did. By the way, thank you for bragging about your heterosexuality and pointing out that. So wife, accelerators down, you do the math and realize we've been sliding backwards. That of course can feel very defeating, but progress is what naturally makes happiness blossom. And weird how Bitcoin makes you feel progress. By the way, I've never met someone in the Bitcoin community who's like asleep. Someone who like says, "You do the news is what's going on. Did you see what's going on?" And Ben, you're the only person who I've ever seen allude in the Bitcoin community to like, sometimes they don't know. Yeah, I don't know that you're ever going to live that down. Sometimes.
Yeah, I mean, you look at my hair, so of course I'm going to say something like that. I'm totally off base. Yeah, it is interesting to see, and I often say that a lot of people, I think they're so disillusioned because when you pour your blood, sweat, and tears into earning a currency that you then expect to, like when you spend your paycheck, you're basically communicating your values. And typically what should happen is where you allocate your funds and the fruits of your labor, those things will be those products and services and wherever it goes should be bolstered higher than the other service that you don't support or whatever. But when you can debase a currency, you can print like half of it over a couple calendar years, you're basically undoing half of every person's actions. And so these people are disillusioned because you expect to see your values reflected back at you by the world, at least partially due to your actions. But when you don't see that, you lose. You become disillusioned, and so your values themselves actually degrade over time, because it's like, well, why am I being altruistic or doing things I believe in? Why not just whatever? Let's just doom spend and be a complete degenerate and whatever, because it doesn't matter anyways, I think. Yeah. Anyways,
we left you hanging there.
Yeah, sorry. Yeah.
Mic drop.
Yeah. Okay. Well, I guess we can put a bow on that topic as well, and go into our final rotation. So I like the I guess slightly more philosophical rabbit hole we went down there. That was nice. But with that, I'm gonna jump to you next as our final topic. I'll cue you up with the same question everybody gets. Why are you bullish?
Well, I usually come on here and tell you why I'm not bullish. And I think that all the reasons that I've articulated in the past not to be bullish are still true. I think there's way too much short-term enthusiasm in the market and way too many people in Bitcoin that are hoping to sell their Bitcoins for more dollars soon. But that said, I think I said this last time too, I'm becoming more and more bullish on the Bitcoin community. I feel like it's coming really together in a way that it hasn't right back to when I got started in Bitcoin. And I think that's most obvious seeing the number and quality of the conferences that we're seeing these days. And I know you're on the same, I think Scott's been to almost as many, and we're hitting a lot of conferences this year. And Madeira, Prague, Montreal have all been amazing conferences. Prague was probably the best Bitcoin conference I've ever been to. That was just phenomenal.
Yeah.
The level of execution on everything there, and the quality of the content, and the vendors and everything was just amazing. We've obviously also got our own conference here, the Bitcoin Rodeo, that we're not going to be anywhere near the scale of those kinds of conferences, but I think we're going to compete with any of them on the quality of the content. It's really geared towards talking about why Bitcoin is useful and relevant in the real world. We're trying to stay a little bit away from the macroeconomic or technical topics that dominate some of the conferences. And a big reason for that is because we're trying to draw in a lot of the sort of like freedom community, which we have a huge group of here in Alberta. The trucker convoy, COVID, all that stuff really woke up a lot of people. And I've spoken to a lot of those groups recently, and they're definitely ready to hear what we have to say. They're ready to look at the solution for sure. And I think it's just going to keep going. We've got, Nashville coming up. I don't think I'm going to go to that conference, but I might go to Nashville. And then recently announced was the Learning Bitcoin Conference in Victoria, another Canadian one that looks pretty cool that I'm definitely going to go to. I think that's September 28th. So yeah, I mean, that's probably the biggest thing for me is that like Bitcoiners as a community are really crystallizing in a way that we haven't before, and especially without the sort of back-end support of the shitcoin industry, which for a long time, a lot of conferences were kind of like funded by that stuff because all their sponsors were selling shitcoins and whatnot. And I think we've moved past that to the point where the Bitcoin industry itself can stand on its own, and we can have conferences and we can have our own conferences, we can have our own media. We don't need to piggyback on this sort of grift that has so much spending power that we've seen from like Ethereum and whatnot infecting all of the conferences. And so, that's the biggest thing for me, I think, is just, I think the community is amazing.
Yeah.
And I got to touch on one thing that I noticed in the chat here that we haven't brought up is we're going to be doing the roast of BTC sessions.
Wonderful.
At the rodeo. And C-Funk, who's going to be in the roast as well, is trying to convince Yellow to join. And we have no one joining remotely at this conference, but I think I would make an exception for Yellow if he wanted to join remotely to join the roast.
I would permit that. I would of anybody to to call in from across the planet and roast me.
Now, Dave, I'm curious, is the benchmark for considering it a successful roast if he's so offended he actually leaves the Bitcoin community? I feel like there's a line we don't want to cross because I think he's a great asset.
If I become like a .eth that very evening.
I feel like if you can, or anyone in the roast can be toxic enough to make Ben become an ETH tard, that's a win.
We've got confirmation from Yellow. He will zoom himself in and he will roast from afar. So Yellow, start formulating your digs now. So yeah, Dave, I've heard you've been busy trading notes with people, and
Yeah, I mean,
should I bring my Kleenexes? Like, am I going to be crying here or what?
The funny thing is you're like, in some ways you're like very easy to roast, but in other ways, like everybody loves Ben. So it makes it a little bit harder to roast him because he's such a nice guy. But I think the group of people that we have assembled, JP is the only one that doesn't really know you well, but he has the advantage of being a professional comedian.
Yeah.
And the rest of us, I think we all know you well enough not to pull any punches.
Great.
And FYI, an actual roast, it's a combination of insulting while honoring the roast recipient. And I'm not necessarily confident that balance is going to be made. It might be a lot more insulting, but we'll see how that turns out.
Yeah. I'll I'll take it as best I can, I suppose. It should be a good time.
You're a brave man, Ben.
Yeah.
I admire that, brother.
Oh, awesome. Well, gentlemen, I'm conscious of time, and you know, I'm going to gradually begin to round out here, but I do like to kind of round out episodes in a certain way. And so the way I usually like to do this is do one last around the circle, where anybody can give kind of any final thoughts on any of the discussions that we've had, anything that you maybe didn't get to get out, or, you know, summaries that you'd like to throw in. But secondly, I like for guests to give a recommendation, and a recommendation could be anything that you think would be helpful to people that are watching this episode. And it could be Bitcoin related. It could be just a tangential topic. It could be, you know, a pod you listen to, a book you read. Maybe it's like an app you tried, or a device you really like, or maybe it's a piece of life advice that you think would be good for somebody to follow. Whatever it is, again, it's whatever you decide. But I'll start first to give you guys a moment to stew with that. So yeah, I mean, the theme of this episode to me has been very, I suppose, community focused, and different types of communities, right? Like, you know, from local to kind of global to even looking to communities that are far financially better off than us, like the Michaels of the world. You know, unfortunately, I'm a lowly Ben, but we are legion, we are strong. So either way, the communities in and around Bitcoin are growing, and Dave, as you said, are able to stand on their own, under their own merit, without having to pull in external funding. And I think Bitcoiners as a whole are getting to be a powerful bunch. And I think that's all that's required is for individuals to go out into their local communities and actually assemble these people in a place where you can actually create meaningful relationships. Because if you're unorganized, then you're effectively useless. But in a group, you can actually affect change and make each other's lives better. And so I think it's upon every person, and I guess my summary is tying into my piece of advice, and it's more a piece of life advice, or my suggestion to everybody is, go into your local communities and rally together and see how you can be useful together. What do you do for a living? What skills do you have? What products and services do you offer? You already recognize that Bitcoin is the better money. It's a no-brainer that you should be accepting it, but it's not enough to just throw up a sticker in your shop. You need to meet the other Bitcoiners in and around where you are and tell them that you're doing this thing, and that they should, you know, come in and frequent your location. And you should support others that are doing the same, that provide value to you. So, you know, come together, bring your local community together, and support each other as best you can. And it can be as simple as going to your local meetup, or starting a local meetup, and just chatting to each other about what you do and how you can, you know, build your local community together, and have events and be friends. But with that, I'll toss it down the line to Scott. And Scott, I'll get your final thoughts and recommendations that you may have.
Yeah, I think maybe to just touch on a point that Dave made, there are a lot of Bitcoiners that have never been to a Bitcoin conference, and a lot of closet Bitcoiners. And if you haven't been to an event, like, you got to get to one. It's an experience that will change your perception of how Bitcoiners interact. The vibe at all of them is off the charts, and rodeo is going to be amazing. So if you're anywhere in Western Canada or the Northwest US, get yourself to Calgary next weekend. It's going to be awesome. And I maybe to what you were saying, Ben, about it's like Bitcoin's like the horn of Gondor. You know, we're not just magnetizing Bitcoiners. We've got the freedom people. We've got, like, you know, we're just going to show up on the battlefield of freedom. And I was recording a pod the other day with a guy who said Bitcoin is the first form of money that doesn't take anything. It doesn't ask anything. It only gives. And so to me, there are no barriers for recruitment with Bitcoin. All we need is to sort of be ready, available, and help as many people as possible understand this idea, learn how to interact with it. And I think as Bitcoiners, your conviction grows when you meet others and when you sort of take the step out of just owning some and actually going to spend some and meet others and hear the presentations and topics. So that would be my 2 cents on it. I'm going to take a shot to plug the Block Reward Pod.
Yeah.
It is a podcast that's geared for people of any level of Bitcoining. And so if you have a spouse that is not interested in listening to this stuff, I try to record the episodes in a way that you might be able to have it on and not get in trouble. Anyone at any level of Bitcoining can listen. We did an episode with Ben in February. Dave came on back in November. JP's not booked yet, but we'll be confirming that at some point soon. So you can find it. It's on all the platforms. The Block Reward.
Awesome, love it, man, and looking forward to seeing you soon as well. JP, I'll toss it down to you. Any final thoughts, recommendations for yourself?
Yeah, before the recommendations, the thought, and not to sound like I'm just piggybacking, but it's what I had in my mind from the initiation of this round. The community aspect, so important. I think the positive of people who are awakened to Bitcoin, we share the value of freedom to one degree or another. It's probably a large degree. And with that, left unchecked, we're all like a bunch of feral wildcats out doing our own thing. But the community events, like I'm so looking forward to being at the Bitcoin Rodeo in Calgary and the Sats market. That's where magic happens. That's where organization of powerful values and technologies happens. And Ben, I love your call to also local, get things going in your own community, because that's where the power is really harnessed. And I've been in rooms where it's just magic happens. You put humans together and things that you weren't going to predict, ideas you weren't going to predict, that's where it happens. So get yourself to conferences. Calgary is top of my list next. And then as far as recommendations, say what you think, period. And, I think if you want to look at centralized thought, you watch the news. But if you're a Bitcoiner, you're into decentralization, and decentralized thought comes from us. And we're living in a time where we need that expressed. We need to have the little bit of courage it takes to say what you think about whatever it is. So for me, that's like an embodiment of what Bitcoin represents. Say what you think. And then lastly, if what really turned me on and helped me understand Bitcoin was Michael Saylor. So if you're a relative newbie to Bitcoin, or you're looking to show people the light, my recommendation would be go on YouTube or wherever, find interviews with Michael Saylor, where someone is, it's a host bringing Michael Saylor in, not to just preach to Bitcoiners, but to preach to an outside audience. His way of explaining things is a bridge that is very easy to see, very easy to cross, because he's a very smart dude. So those would be my 2 recommendations.
Awesome. Love it. Dave, I'll toss it to you last. Again, final thoughts, recommendations. Go ahead.
Yeah. So I've gotten in trouble a few times for saying what I think. I got in trouble from the board of a public company, and I at one point got in trouble from the board for saying, put the socialists in the ocean. They thought that could be considered calling for the murder of socialists. But I also noticed in the same thread that somebody named SW Moore in the chat has saying that his wife is ready to divorce him for watching this. So I guess if she's single, get her to call me. But other than that, I got a few things to shill. So obviously we've got the Bitcoin Rodeo coming up, bitcoinrodeo.com, or if anybody watching this wants a special rate and is willing to pay in Bitcoin, they can DM me on Twitter or Telegram. If you can't figure that out, I don't know what to tell you.
I mean, if they can't figure that out, they probably can't figure out sending you Bitcoin either. So.
Yeah, exactly. And we have up there some combo tickets with learning Bitcoin in Victoria, and they're VIP tickets that they have. It ends up being nearly free to add the second ticket. It's an extra $10 to add the ticket, which is, I think, a $250 value. So if you're able to make both conferences, that's probably a great idea. And then I'm going to shill JP's show, which in theory, I also have a promo code for. JP is going to be performing his stand-up comedy show in Calgary on July 27th and 27th to 29th.
Yes,
I think
I've got it here too.
Laugh Shop in Calgary.
Yeah, and last I heard update this morning, Dave, it was next to sold out, only 4 tickets left. That was this morning. So
okay,
if any of y'all can slide in, awesome. And if it's fully booked out, make sure you're at the Bitcoin Rodeo. I'll be there.
Yeah. It's sold out. So tough shit. That's what we're getting at.
Yeah.
Either way, yes, come to the Bitcoin Rodeo. It's sold out, so you may as well come to the rodeo. Great. No, that's awesome. That's super awesome. Well, this was great. I'm again very excited to see you gents all in person very shortly. Again, if anybody has not yet grabbed tickets to the rodeo or to JP's show, which is sold out again, so tough shit. But you can find those both again if you go to Laugh Shop Calgary. Maybe there's a ticket or 2 left. You can snag them and bitcoinrodeo.com, and you can grab some tickets for that as well. And the SAT market. You can find that just, hit my Twitter, hit my Nostr. I've been sharing links to it, but it's also on meetup.com. And it's going to be at the Deerfoot Inn and Casino on the morning of July 1st. That is Canada Day. And it's going to run from 9 a.m. till 3 p.m., I believe. And then we'll go from there, and we'll be hanging out. We'll be doing some talks. We'll be doing all kinds of stuff down there. So it's free to attend. And if you are a merchant that would like to be a part of it, then please do reach out. You can email satmarket@proton.me and just say, hey, I have a good or service that I would like to shill at a table there, and I accept Bitcoin. We will be happy to have you. So anyways, with that, gents, I suppose I will round out. I want to thank all of you guys for taking the time to be here and getting bullish with me on a Friday night. I really do appreciate it. And also a big thank you to everybody in the chat that was joining us all evening. I had a couple thousand people tune in over the last hour and a bit to say hey, and I'm sure there will be many more over the next few days that will watch this and listen to the audio version of the podcast as well. So thank you guys, and we hope to see you at the Bitcoin Rodeo as well. But with that, gents, thank you so much. I'll see you guys soon, and you're all welcome back on here any time that you like.
Appreciate y'all.
Cheers, guys. See you later. And everybody, thank you for being here again. Everybody in the chat, make sure you smash that like button, give this a share, show it some love, and of course, subscribe if you have not already. Again, bitcoinrodeo.com, and you can find everything you need there. And I hope to see you guys at the SAT market as well. And just a side note, if you've been a fan of the channel for a while, you've been watching, the years and years of tutorials and everything that I've been doing, and you need a little bit of additional help with that, and you need somebody to help hold your hand through that. A couple months back, I launched my company, Bitcoin Mentor, and I've aggregated a bunch of legendary awesome, incredible educators in and around the Bitcoin space. They were hand selected from a crop of 350 people that applied. We've got 16 that we whittled it down to, and they're always on the ready to help you with anything you need, whether it be, again, key management, hardware, multisig, running a node, hobbyist home mining, whatever you want to get into, they will be happy to help you. And I guess my big thing when I touch on this is don't become a Bitcoin Luddite. Quite oftentimes people will learn their one thing that they do in Bitcoin, and then they just kind of stand still. So be curious, keep learning. Obviously, again, there's a ton of free content on the channel with all the tutorials. But if you do need some help and you feel a little bit stuck, then please do reach out at bitcoinmentor.io. So with that, I'm going to round out. Thank you guys so much for being here. And I guess that's it. I'll be seeing you guys next week. Keep your eyes peeled for everything going on. And the Bitcoin Rodeo is just 10 days out. So have a wonderful day or evening, wherever you may be. See you guys next time for your daily session.
HODL the Bitcoin.